Well, great day, everyone, and welcome to Spirit and Mind, where we discuss current affairs with faith and mental health perspectives. I'm Bishop Guy Robinson, and of course, joining me is my colleague, Dr. Jonathan Shepard. Good day, Dr. Shepard.
Hey, good day, Bishop. How are you doing today?
All is well, all is well. Busy week, but here we are, and I'm hyped about another presentation of Spirit and Mind. How was your week?
The week has been good. Yes. We took a pause last week. We like using that word pause since it's been highlighted in the news. And it was a good chance for us to kind of recoup. But my week has been good. My parents are actually here. And so if you hear some rattling around or a person walk through or whatnot, it's not a stranger. It's just my parents who are here. Their first trip since they have since the pandemic, their first trip. So it was a big deal, and they wanted to come here first, and I am grateful for that. So they're here celebrating Mother's Day. My mother is alive, and so I'm thankful for that. And was not affected by the coronavirus, and so even more thankful for that. And so, yes, it's been quite a week, and we look to celebrate all those who are out there. And we see so many people who've already jumped in and let us know that they're watching. And so, thank you for those. So go ahead and send us a comment. Let us know that you're watching with us, and hope that you all have had a wonderful week also.
Yes, and I want to echo that, Dr. Shepard, and thank our Spirit and Mind family for supporting our marathon this past week as well. Thank you so much for the questions and for the engagement and for the feedback. We're so appreciative, and we're going to be addressing that in the weeks to come. And responding to some of the questions and observations to follow up. We just want to thank you for your support of Spirit and Mind. Thank you so much for engaging us during the marathon. And again, we'll get back to that. But this is Mother's Day weekend. And Dr. Shepard just talked about his parents being here or being with him at home. And so we're so grateful for that as well. Of course, his dad was with us several weeks ago, and has been a guest here on Spirit and Mind. And so he's part of our Spirit and Mind experience here. We're grateful for that. So, Dr. Shepard, you also mentioned them taking their first trip since the pandemic, and thought that was a great segue because you usually give us an update. And so I don't know if there's anything breaking you want to report, but what do we need to know, if anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's always something, Bishop. It's just
I just set that up.
I mean, even if it's just we are still here, it's always something with this pandemic. And so my father, I think, is even doing a little bit of work even while he's here. But for those who are getting ready to travel, travel season is upon us, and it is forecasted to be quite a busy travel season because people are just anxious to be able to get about. I would just tell people that you still need to be cautious. You want to make sure that wherever you're going, you want to read up on what the current infection rates are. Every state within our country does put up the infection rates of what's happening within that particular state. So whether or not you're driving or flying, please know that if you are flying, you do have to wear the mask for the whole entire flight. Airlines have reported that there are more unruly passengers than ever. And so we want to make sure you're not one of those Spirit and Mind followers who's being unruly on the airline, or one of your family members. And just go ahead and wear the mask. And it does hinder you from certain things that you're used to. But if you're going to fly or even ride the train, I believe that's the same case. Or even a bus too. You have to make sure that you remain covered. People have asked, well, if I'm fully vaccinated, why do I need to still wear a mask? And until research has told us different, we know that you're still able to carry the virus even when you are fully vaccinated. When you are fully vaccinated, it just prevents you from getting the full blown disease of COVID-19. That's the disease that is killing so many people. And I will even address that. But that's why you have to still wear the mask when you're in certain crowds when you're fully vaccinated, because you can potentially carry that disease and give it to someone else um, who is not vaccinated. And in Maryland, where we live, it's only about 37% of people have been vaccinated. 37%. So that lets me know that we still have a ways to go. We're doing good, but we're nowhere near what's called herd immunity. Herd immunity is where there is a protection, if you would. Again, I'm using layman's terms, where something like a virus is going to be in the land, and I believe coronavirus is going to be here. Many of you have heard me say that, unless God Himself decides to eradicate it, the coronavirus is going to be here. We just have to learn how to be able to manage it and move forward through it. And so I'm encouraging those here in Maryland. This is my second point, to get vaccinated. Right now, the average age of those who are really getting sick, Bishop, is actually between 30 and 40. It's the younger populations who are driving the infection rates right now. And there's various reasons for that. They have not been vaccinated due to mistrust in the government and science, due to hesitancy, wanting to kind of wait out to see what's going to happen. And so we want to make sure that you know that the vaccine is safe. I say that with no reservations. I've now been fully vaccinated, coming up on 3 full months now. I got fully vaccinated in February. And so 3 full months and going forward, and want you to know that the vaccine is safe and we need to go ahead and take it. And with that, I will just say this, Bishop, how did the other plagues end in our nations, such as smallpox, such as measles, such as diphtheria, and some other well-known diseases? Guess how it ended? It didn't end with a prayer. It ended with the vaccine. Prayer is always in order, absolutely. But it ended, God allowed it to happen through vaccines. And I believe that this is going to be the way in which God is going to have it to be done also. So please take what I say seriously. Please know that I am fully aware of all the different aspects and factors that go into why people are hesitant. I do. But when we look at history and we look at how plagues have ended, they've ended through vaccines. And so I do believe that this is going to be another one that will end by a vaccine. All right, Bishop, that's it for today.
Good. And so very helpful. Thank you, Dr. Shepherd. And what a powerful thing to meditate on. And hopefully we're processing that well, that there is not to draw unnecessary conflicts, that faith and science can work together. One of God's attributes is omniscience, which means all science. And so it is even science is an attribute of the divine. And so what you just said was so powerful. It reminded me of a statement that one of the great preachers of our time, Dr. Charles Adams, said about sermons. He said, great sermons are birthed in the prayer closet and they are nurtured in the library. I'll say that again. Great sermons are birthed in the prayer closet and they are nurtured full term in the library. And so if I'm hearing you, what that brought to mind is that I believe God is our healer. He is Jehovah Rapha, and great healing can begin in the prayer closet, certainly, and it can be nurtured through rehabilitation, vaccination, preventive lifestyle changes and choices. And so, or as the Bible puts it, faith and works, as James put it. So these things really can work together. So let's not stop praying, and having prayed, let's follow through. with the things that God gives us in terms of theologians call it special grace and common grace. And so let's follow through with both. And all things are yours is what Paul said to the church at Corinth. So we're good for this update, and we're believing God to give us faith to follow through and do the thing he has given us to do as well, and become participants. I don't want to stay there too long, but there's a lot of healing stories and witnesses in the Bible where Jesus asked us to participate. Take up your bed and walk. Go wash in the pool. Go show yourself to the priest. And so we participate in the miracle when God gives us those opportunities. So let's do our part for the full testimony of healing to the glory of God. It's Mother's Day weekend. The other piece we were talking about was that it's Mother's Day weekend. And how appropriate it is. I was thinking today, Dr. Shepherd, as we talk about some of the biopsychosocial and spiritual benefits and things in the mother-child relationship. But I thought about this, how appropriate it is that Mother's Day is positioned right between resurrection and Pentecost. As we are approaching Pentecost, which is, of course, from the Jewish history of Shavuot, and then continued after the Passover, and then for the church represents the Spirit and the promise that Jesus gave to the apostles concerning the indwelling power of the Holy Spirit that empowered the work of the church and the witness of the church. And so how appropriate it is as we approach Pentecost that we're taking this moment to celebrate Mother's Day. Why? Because it just started me thinking on the theology here that when we're really first introduced to the Holy Spirit or the Spirit of God in Scripture in Genesis 1, we meet the Spirit of God moving upon the face of the waters. That's what the text says. In the original Hebrew, it really translates to say hovering. And that moving, the imagery there is hovering like an eagle over her nest. It is a very maternal presentation, even using feminine engendering in the grammar to describe the work of the Holy Spirit or the Spirit of God moving upon creation. And so there's this idea of the Spirit of God hovering and nurturing and comforting and protecting and directing the order of creation, and this connectivity with creativity and creation and motherhood. David even taps into this tradition in Psalm 51 when he's asking to create in me. He's asking to be restored. He says, create in me a clean heart. And here it is, and take not your Holy Spirit away from me, because it is this hovering presence of the Holy Spirit that nurtures the creative process. And so as we prepare even to celebrate Pentecost, here we are celebrating motherhood, and there's spiritual potency in the concept of motherhood. And so we celebrate mothers this weekend. And Dr. Shepherd, we were talking in preparation for this moment about some thoughts about mothers and mental wellness. And so get us started, and then we'll see where the Lord takes us, Dr. Shepherd.
Absolutely. So I'll just pick up right where Bishop left off. And so we're thankful for mothers being nurturers, and we're going to just apply just some practical tips and some applications as to how your mother and those mothers who are out there have been those nurturers. We want to again say happy Mother's Day. It might be a birthday, but happy Mother's Day to all those who are out there. And, we understand that this is such a time where people, they really battle within their emotions. They understand that this weekend can be quite emotional. And that is why we wanted to take the time today to deal with this, mothers and mental wellness. Even after this particular live broadcast, I'll be working with a sorority, as they will be highlighting the women within that particular chapter, and just talking about depression. And some might say, well, why did they wait until Mother's Day weekend to talk about depression? Because it is one of those things that really is emphasized, unfortunately, on a particular holiday such as Mother's Day. Well, how is depression emphasized? Because people start to look at their mother not being here physically, or if their mother is here, they start to even say, wow, I don't have the mother that I wish I had. Mm-hmm. And then, Bishop, even this came to light as I was working with some of the clinicians with my job yesterday. One of the mothers in our team meeting, she stated that, I just had a miscarriage. And so Mother's Day now is really heavy for her because she was anticipating becoming a mother. Wow. And so I know that is, even for some of you all out there, you may be able to identify with those persons who are in one of those three categories. Your mother's no longer here, or your mother's alive and you wish things were different with her, or you were anticipating becoming something and you no longer are able to do that for whatever reason it may be. So we want to reach out to you all. When I identify those three areas, I don't identify it for you to feel bad. I identify it because we understand and we want to give insight. We want to be able to help you with being able to move through this particular season and weekend. One of the things, Bishop, and I'm sure you're going to touch on that once I'm done, but one of the things I do want to start out with is mothers are typically our first teachers. I learned the word pedagogue from Bishop Robinson, and you probably heard that word again during the marathon when we were talking about living your life, living your best life socially. That was such a powerful episode. You need to go back and watch that. And you, of course, digress very quickly here. You can always go back to spiritandmind.vidflex.tv to go back and watch all of those. Yes, thank you. Our engineer is right on it. And you can always go back and do that. We didn't say that at the top of the show. But to go back to what I was saying is that our mothers are typically our first teachers. They're our first pedagogues, which is part of our social component. Our mothers will help us in learning how to even find our places in life socially through that teaching, through the demonstration, through the mentoring that mothers give. And so that's so important to recognize, because I can even hear someone saying, wow, I missed that. And that might be one of the parts that I am deprived of, because I wish my mother would have given me this. I wish my mother could have shown me that. I wish she could have been here for that particular training or teaching that I needed. And I want you to know again, as we go through these steps and recommendations, how to be able to work through this weekend, God will give you people who will be able to serve as that mother figure for you. But I was just thinking about how mothers, again, are our first teachers. My mother is a teacher by trade. She has a doctorate in education. And so she taught me how to be able to tie my shoes, how to be able to read, math, and was even smart enough that even at the time, and parents out there know that when your child is born in a certain month of the year, you may have to wait until that following year in order to start school. And that was one of the issues that with me being born in December. And so my mother knew at the age of 4 that I was ready to go into kindergarten. And so what she did, she put me into a private school for 2 years for kindergarten and first grade. And then by me staying there, I was ready to go into public school at second grade, and they couldn't hold me back by the time that I was in second grade. So I was always a little bit younger than most of my classmates and peers, with my birthday being in December. But I was on that level ready because my mother helped prepare me for that level of training. So I'm just giving, again, practical application that you can utilize even now. Mothers will help you to be able to prepare for life's challenges, for instance, education, for schooling. So when I got into second grade, I was ready for those challenges. I can even think, though, it was in second grade that I actually experienced racism for the first time that I can remember, where even though I was a little younger than my classmates, my teacher at the time, she thought that I had a mental problem. She thought I was mentally retarded, Bishop. Had even gone as far as to have me tested by the state to say that my mental faculties were below average and well below average. And a lot of it had to do because of my skin color. It might even have to do with a little bit of my age. But my mother, again, would not allow that to settle in within me. I can remember being set apart differently from my classmates, even at second grade, and told that I was not able to perform at the level that other people were. But again, it was a mother who said, no, that's not you. You are able to learn just as well as the other people in your class. She made sure that I understood how to be able to perform the math exercises, how to be able to do, I'm stopping right here, Bishop. It was funny. The teacher said that I was below average because I couldn't cut straight with scissors. Now, come on now, something's wrong with that. But again, people at that age, you're looking for people to build you up. And so I want to encourage those mothers who are out there, continue to fight for your children when you know that there are things that are being set against them that should not be. And so these are some of the things that we want to talk about, the importance of mothers and how we want to build up their mental wellness through this episode today.
Indeed. Wow. Thank you, Doc. So thank God for your mom. Wow. Exemplify what we're talking about. Mothers, typically a child's first teacher. And the scriptures give insight and says, train up a child in the way that he or she should go. And mothers being advocates, fighting for child's right to thrive and survive. And as our Spirit and Mind family, you may have some moments where, again, as Dr. Shepherd put it so well, we are aware of that there's a diverse group of testimonies. Some persons may be experiencing grief. Some persons may be experiencing gratitude. And so would you, those of you who feel so led, we're talking right now about the attributes and things we appreciate. You just heard Dr. Shepherd talk about what he appreciated about his mom. You may want to join in the discussion and say, I appreciate my mom's, I'll chime in. I appreciate my mom's compassion by way of my personal testimony. My mom was a diplomat. She's always the one, if we had, I had two brothers and we had a skirmish or if dad, he was the disciplinary and mom was the diplomat who was always like, now we're going to come together. She did that in church, in her ministry. She was always the come, let us reason together. And I didn't always appreciate that when it was in the moment. But in hindsight, I look back and I appreciate her diplomacy and her macaroni and cheese. Man, I miss that. But you may have some things you appreciate about your mom. I appreciate her bringing me up in church, she and my dad, and making sure that I always had a testimony. And so you may have some moments where you have those remembrances like Dr. Shepherd and his mom advocating for him. My mom watching her bring reconciliation to parties that were going through skirmishes and battles. I appreciate my mom's diplomacy and her dependability. So you may want to share some things you appreciate about your mom, even her memory, if she's no longer with us. And so we invite you to put that in the timeline as well. And before we go to the next segment, I also, if the Spirit of the Lord leads you, to put some things that if this is a challenging moment for you, you may feel led to do that. Here's why. And this is the scripture that comes to mind. There's a scripture, Dr. Shepherd, when the prophet Elijah was feeling alone and isolated. And when he had that really depressed moment in that battle, he really got to himself and he said something powerful. He said to God, I'm the only one left. I'm the only one going through like this. And that's how the enemy began to play with his mind to think I'm the only one. And certainly Mother's Day is a marketed event, and there's a lot of marketing going on, and merchants are advertising, and nothing wrong with that. But for others, that merchandising can be triggers. And so it may be bringing some things up for you, and so that somebody will know they're not alone. You may want to chime in and say, this is a challenging weekend for me, but God is keeping me. So we solicit your words of encouragement as well as we continue to talk about this important subject. And so, Dr. Shepherd, we talked also about some factors that align with the well-being of a mother, that how other benefits, Psalm 103 says, bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all of his benefits. So what are, as our audiences and our family is writing in the chat line, what are some of the benefits that we were talking about that align with the well-being of a mother?
Yeah, absolutely. The pandemic has really affected so many mothers. When you look at the statistics that have been highlighted through the New York Times, and I have some of those here, and they really wrote a wonderful article, and I encourage those to go and research it. But it's called Betrayal, Not Burnout, Bishop. I mean, that was a powerful title, because it was as if our country had betrayed our mothers and not really allowed for them to fully operate in the midst of such a pandemic. You might say, well, how did we betray the mothers? Well, when you look at how many of them lost their jobs, it was about 4.7 million mothers who lost their jobs during the pandemic. That's a lot of people. And even if you look at the job stats that came out, we're doing a little bit better, but our president has been quite clear that we are not out of the woods yet. Our economy is not back where it was prior to the pandemic. And let me tell you who's the backbone of our economy: our mothers, our women. Yes, they are, because they're the ones who are holding down so many of the different labor force jobs that are required. Now, when I look at this, we look at the women who had to stop working, Bishop, especially Black mothers who had to stop working, or even leave their children at home to fend for themselves and be on a computer screen while they were out at work. And your child is not going to want to be on a computer screen for school and with nobody there watching, overseeing him or her. Now, you may have that extraordinary child, so thank God if you do. But the normal child, I'm just going to tell you, it takes somebody to help to make sure and navigate. And mothers, I empathize with you all. I want you to know that people do recognize you. You might be out there right now and say, I didn't sign up to become a teacher for my child. And grandparents, I recognize you too, because I'm seeing so many grandparents who now have to care for the child while the mother is at work. And she didn't sign up for it either. I tell you, it's something where we felt like, or the article mentioned that the women, the mothers of our country, felt betrayed. And I'll say this: they gave. I learned this this acronym called ALICE, and so many of our women and mothers, your name might not be Alice, but you identify with Alice. Well, what is Alice? It's asset limited, income constrained, employed. I'll say that again. Asset limited, income constrained, but yet employed. So you may not have all that you want. Your assets are limited. Your income is constrained below where you want it, but yet employed. There's so many people like that, Bishop. When I was looking at the numbers, 61% of the jobs in Maryland pay less than $20 an hour. So, that's, these are some just astonishing statistics. I'm laying the platform for why we have to speak to the well-being of our mothers, because that's why your wellness is so important. When you look at how to help maintain your wellness, mothers, there's 4 factors, and I will just go through them really quickly, and we may just take some time to go through, and Bishop will add some insight to them. Number one is satisfaction with friends. Number one, satisfaction with friends. Again, we're talking about the four factors that align with your well-being of a mother. Women, people, but women in particular, are very social beings. It's part of your DNA. It's part of who God created you to be. And don't shy away from and don't let nobody tell you, oh, you talk too much. That's how God made women. All right. And again, different women, you may not be as social as another woman. That's okay. But just as if we want to just use a generality, women are social beings. And it is something where women do find satisfaction with friends. You want to know your circle. I go back to that episode about living your best life socially. You need to know who's in your social components, who are part of your social components, part of your social circle, and have satisfaction with your friends. If you're always with friends who tear you down, girl, you can't do no better. You just need to go ahead and do this and that and stuff that you know that's not going to elevate your mind or elevate who you are. That's not a part of your friends that you really should have. And you want to make sure that you find some satisfaction with those. There should be some give and take. And that's very important. Number two, authenticity. Yes. People want to know that you are real with them. Mothers have an intuition like no one else. And so I'm thankful for a mother who has good insight, intuition. You want to make sure that you're utilizing those skills. Authenticity. You can look through and see who's real, who's fake. For those who are in the process of determining if they want to live with someone as far as the rest of life, become married, and or even making a major decision, you want to make sure you check in with your mother. Sometimes there are things that she may see that you may not even notice, and I do know that is true. That word authenticity there is really key because you can determine a fake versus real when you when you have authenticity. I don't know why the image just came to mind, Bishop, of one of those peddlers who sells those Gucci bags on the street. It looks real. Oh my God, it might even smell real. but but it's not authentic. And let me tell you, anybody who understands they can see a mile away, even though it may look like it's something that looks real eye appealing, but they can look and tell whether or not it's authentic or not. And so these are some of the things that we look at to help maintain wellness for mothers. Number three, feeling seen and loved. A mother wants to know that she is seen and appreciated and loved. Many times mothers go unappreciated, but it's always nice to bring forth a mother to the forefront. That's why you hear so many people when they're at award ceremonies thanking their mother. That's appreciative. I can even think about who was that who just kind of embarrassed his mother during the Oscars the other week. Talked about how his mother and father got together to make him. Man, he won the best supporting actor award. I see his face, can't think of his name. But I tell you, his mother was like, oh my Lord. He acknowledged her, but then he went on to say, I'm thankful that my mother and father got together and now I'm here. She was looking like, why did he go there? But again, that was part of being seen and loved. I know that's a little bit of a stretch there as far as the example, but I think it works. I think it works. Yes. Yeah. He gave that wonderful speech. And then number four is feeling comforted. And so feeling comforted, knowing that when a mother is going through, when a mother is having rough times herself, we want to make sure that our mothers know that we're there to support them, that they feel comforted. So We just reported some of those factors that align with maternal well-being, satisfaction with friends, authenticity, feeling seen and loved, and then feeling comforted. All right, Bishop.
Wow. That's our prayer for every mother. That this will be your experience as you move forward in this Mother's Day weekend and even beyond. Well, how powerful that is. Satisfaction with friends, authenticity, feeling seen and loved, and feeling comforted. We also are aware that there's some persons for whom Mother's Day is a bit challenging and perhaps triggers some brief reactions. So we also wanted to talk about some ways that might be considered helpful, and we'll just go through them. If you're taking notes, we'll maybe put them on the screen, but you can take notes and see how they help you, see if they work. Any of them particularly register with you. So what do I do if Mother's Day for me is a challenging moment? My mother is no longer with me. That certainly is my testimony. My mother has gone home to be with the Lord. But I know she left a great legacy. Again, as I said before, my mom was a caregiver. She was a nurse by profession. And so every day, my brothers and I watched her leave the house, literally to take care of other people, and also to provide for us. And so she was a caregiver in every sense of the word. But what do you do if recommendations for coping with grief? What do you do if Mother's Day triggers some things? Well, here's some recommendations. Number one, acknowledge those feelings. As opposed to repressing them, as opposed to Dr. Shepherd, we can pause here if you have the insight, but as opposed to repressing or suppressing, denying, projecting, acting as if they aren't there. How important is it to say, man, I'm feeling this particular weekend of Mother's Day. I saw a commercial and it triggered something. I saw somebody post something, because now in the age of social media, even social media can trigger some things. And how important is it that we acknowledge that, wow, this is hitting me?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if we don't acknowledge, then most people say that healing can't even occur. When you've been injured, whether it be physically or mentally or even emotionally, there has to be an acknowledgement of that injury. And you might say, well, death is an injury. Yeah, it's an injury because depending on how things turned out, your relationship with your mother, there may be some regrets there. I was mentioning to Bishop that there are some persons who actually experienced death of their mother on Mother's Day. And so when that happens, it's very traumatic. It really can be a form of post-traumatic stress disorder, where just knowing that the date is approaching, just knowing that this is what happened, it really can traumatize and send people back to a place that they don't want to go back to or have not been able to come out of. But acknowledgement is always, and I rarely use that word, but acknowledgement is always the first step, because you have to be able to move slowly, but yet surely as you go through healing. But how can you move through healing if you don't acknowledge that the wound is there? That's like walking through and saying, oh, I'm good. And you got a big gaping hole in your heart. And you're bleeding, and I can see you're bleeding. And yet it's interesting. I notice that all the time, Bishop. It's injuries will tell off on you. And when I use that word injury, I'm not lessening. So please understand that. But something that you don't acknowledge and you allow to linger will then become infected. So you'll go from an injury that could have been handled, but if it maintains, then you now go from injury to infection. And when infection sets in, it becomes even a bigger problem. And I think that that's where we have seen on the mental and emotional side where people have not been healed from the injury regarding their mothers, or regarding what happened in their childhood with their mother, or even adulthood. And then it starts to play out in other relationships. I've seen it with men, where, there is this saying that a man will treat his wife like he treated his mother. There's no scientific proof to that. All right. But that has been stated. But you do want to watch and see how a man treats his mother, how he treats other women, because there is a historical pattern. There is a historical trend that you would then see how he may treat that particular woman who's in his life now. And so acknowledgement, that's where we are. If we want to make sure that we're going to move through, acknowledgement is key.
Absolutely. And we'll move through the list for Mother's Day weekend. So stay with us, because we're going to try to move a little rapidly, but hopefully effectively. So acknowledging feelings. We stayed a little while there because that's so important. As you heard Dr. Shepherd say, you have to do that. Even theologically, our salvation begins with confession. That if you would confess with your mouth, it's this confession that's acknowledging our current state. And so we stayed there a minute because that's a critical step. Secondly, and these aren't in particular order, but they are all equally, perhaps some may resonate with you in your particular experience more than others right now. Secondly, accountability partners, that we be able to identify a person or a friend with whom we can express ourselves. We just talked about one of the factors for maternal well-being is satisfaction with friends. Our social groups, we just talked about in Living Your Best Life. The Sip and Seed series was part of it, was living your best life socially. We are, as paradoxical as it sounds, we are social individuals. And so, yes, we have an individual identity, but our individual identity is so shaped by our interdependent relationships and interpersonal relationships. So we are social individuals, and who we hang around. My dad used to be fond of saying, to the point that my mom on Mother's Day started echoing, this whole association breeds assimilation. I mean, that was just his line, and it became known through the house. And my mom would echo, "What'd your father say?" But the point was that he was trying to make was just that whom we hang around. So you need somebody that you can be real with and say, "Listen, today was a rough day. Listen, Mother's Day, I'm a little, it's 3 days away, and I'm already in this anticipatory grief mode. I'm already reacting 2 weeks out as if it were, and I'm reliving some moments." You need somebody that you can talk to about those kinds of things. And so having the right accountability partners, you need 1 or 2 people for real that you can really call and say, "Listen, this is what's really going on. I couldn't do this at work. I work in customer service, had to shake that off. Couldn't do it here. Couldn't do it there because I'm not that close to this person. But I need somebody on on a game show. You have Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. You have Lifeline. You say, I need somebody I can call when things are challenging that can say, okay, listen, I'm on my way over. Listen, you need me to call somebody. Listen, so having that friend is critical. And that's so important. Dr. Shepherd?
Yes, sir. Absolutely, Bishop. We should just continue on down the list.
All right. Number 3, acknowledge and accept help. That kind of all ties together. So that means if I got this accountability partner, I got help that's available, acknowledge them and allow them to be the help that we need. That simply means just let them do it. I'll do a few more, and then Dr. Shepherd can chime in as he feels led. Number 4, arrangement. That means make a plan for the day. Don't just be captive to the commercialism of Mother's Day and let it catch you off guard and push your emotional buttons. But there's a certain amount of comfort in having a certain amount of, for lack of a better term, control. To be able to say, listen, I can take some autonomy to say, listen, I'm going to, even if it is planning to do nothing, to say it's still my plan. My plan is I'm not going out, not going anywhere, or work that accountability circle. Say, listen, let's hang out on Mother's Day in this season, whether it's online or whether it's socially distanced, whether it's a mask, are you vaccinated? Do the things you have to do, make the inquiries you need to make, but make a plan so that it doesn't just, so that you aren't a helpless captive to the whims of the day, helplessly captivated by somebody's social media post. That's even a plan to say, I'm going to abstain from social media on this particular day because all of the images, I don't want to hate on anybody, but for me, it's a particular trigger. So I want to take some control, and this is the way I'm going to do it. And so that's so very important as well. We just went through a couple, Dr. Shepherd. I want to pause in case you want to help us out any further.
Yeah, making plans is absolutely critical. And as you're making plans, you may even want to, I think number 5 was begin new traditions. And there's nothing wrong with that. You look at what we went through last year. Typically, I'm not with my mother on Mother's Day because they live in Chicago. I live here in Baltimore. But I think over the last probably 5 years, I think I've went home like once or twice during Mother's Day, and now my mother is here with me, and it's just a different tradition that we're setting up this year, where we are to be together because of all that has occurred. Now, I hear someone say, "Well, I'm not vaccinated, or I'm not able to be with my mother this year." Well, do something that is meaningful, which is what I was hearing you say, Bishop. Think about what you're going to do. So many times we just aim effortlessly through life, and we don't get the results because we didn't put the thought into it. We are thinking people, and we have to be able to, yet at times, be spontaneous, but let's think through what we want to do. Because when you are able to make plans, God will actually honor those plans. Things that you thought that, wow, I didn't see how it was going to come together. But I still felt better even that day because I was thinking through what I was going to do. Choose, a worship service. Think about it already. I was thinking about that for my parents before they came. Are we going to go to worship service? If we're going to go, where are we going to go? What are we going to do? Things like that, so that we can have some type of plan, yet leave room for flexibility. Absolutely. But because we thought it through, they can make preparation. They brought the things that they needed. We were able to do what needs to be done, so we can enjoy and have as much fulfillment as possible. I think that's where a lot of people lack. They enjoy being around each other, but are not fulfilled because they didn't take the time to really think through and plan some things. Think about it like this. Some of y'all already thinking about vacations, right? You just throw up and just, okay, I'm gonna get in a plane and go, and I'll find a hotel once I get there and things like that. I don't think you do that. I hope you don't. Now, there may be some trips where that is doable, but most of us don't do that. We got to think about the same way in which we live our lives, especially when there are touching moments that are occurring, that we want to think those things through. If you have a mother who is dying, you think about how you want to be able to honor her in life and even in death. Yes, it's tough to do, but you want to think that thing through, and God will provide. There are certain things that we as humans, we can be there for one for each other, but there is that God component in there, that if we do our part in planning, and this is what I'm stressing, he'll come in and add all the other areas. He'll bring in the sufficiency that we're in need of.
Absolutely, Dr. Shepherd. While you were talking about that, the scripture came to mind. The wisdom of the Proverbs writer in Proverbs 4:23 said, "Guard your heart above all else, because which in the Hebrew is talking about the inner person, the cognitive, emotional, volitional being, the way thoughts, mind, action, feelings, emotions. He says, guard that above all else, because from the heart flows the issues of life. So the point of planning is that I'm not just going to be, if this is a touchy moment for me, I don't just want to be open and vulnerable to any given commercial, any given social media post, any given trigger. I want to have something in place that gives me a feeling of autonomy, of being able to be proactive with flexibility, but I still have some. So again, even if it's I plan to do nothing, it's still my plan. And,
right.
There's a certain amount of comfort that comes in being able to have that kind of autonomy. Next one that's on there that Dr. Shepard mentioned is 6, embrace family. We kind of is reinforcing some things, and there's been some studies to show. The reason why I included that is because there's been some studies to show that sometimes passing or transitioning of parent can increase disconnect between siblings, when actually the passing of the parent is the thing that we have in common, and perhaps we can come together, and that can go with making those new traditions, even if it's that we come together and talk about how we experienced mom, because that's the fascinating thing. We can come from the same home and yet have different impressions and unique perspectives between that individual parent-child relationship. And so when we come together, we get to talk about those. But I raise that again because, and even from my own, one of my mother's last words as she was preparing to transition was she called me and my brothers in and said, y'all stay together. She didn't have the research and the documents that I had at my access recently, but just instinctively, she said her great maternal worry was that we would somehow drift apart in her absence. And so we included that because now there's actually some evidence-based research to kind of conclude that there's a proclivity or a chance of siblings not hanging together once that parental figure has transitioned, when actually we can be agents of healing to one another. So we included that one for that reason, to make new family traditions, even if it's just, again, to come together over a meal and talk about things that made funny moments with mom, corrective moments with mom, lessons from mom. They can all kind of be helpful. The next thing that we have there on that list is to forgive. And Dr. Shepard talked on this a little bit, again, because this is building upon each other. Maybe the relationship with mom wasn't the greatest or wasn't what I wanted it to be. There's a lot of, again, I was reading some data this week that really describes forgiveness as an act of self-care. That there are somatic mind-body benefits affiliated with forgiving, which is an autonomous decision to say, I forgive you. Theologically, it means you don't owe me anything. And forgiveness has different forms. It does not always mean full reinstatement of the relationship as it was before. That's a form, but it's not the way forgiveness is ubiquitously put in place. Sometimes forgiveness is not full reinstatement, but it is a healthy restructuring of the relationship as is. Another family example, for example, we may never get back together again. I may never work at this job, or we may never be employer-employee, or we may never hang out every other weekend like we used to, but the relationship has been restructured in a healthy way for the sake of raising children, maybe for the sake of co-parenting, or for the sake of moving on to the next level. It won't resume exactly what it was. That's true even with people who have transitioned. I mean, it would be, I can't see my mother again like I did when she was living. But if there were any estrangement between us, for me to forgive her is to restructure the relationship and appreciate it for what it is. And so that can be very liberating and holistically healthy as well. So forgiveness in the sense that there may be some family discord or history of trauma or disagreement. Forgive for you. Do it as an act of self-care, if nothing else. Dr. Shepherd, I'm going to pause there before we hit the last three. Please help us out. And
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We should probably just hit those last three because we're running out on time. But I hear you on that. That forgiveness is really good about the restructuring. So many of our families need that restructuring because we came into broken families. I'll just say that. So many of our families were broken from the very beginning, and you had nothing to do about it. For those who are children, you came into a broken situation. You came into a malfunctioning family or dysfunctional family, as they say, and you have to be able to ask and release, ask God to help you. But you have to be able to release some of those expectations that you had so that you can be able to restructure and be able to move on. That really is pivotal. Let's look at the other three in our last 3 minutes here. We have to practice self-care. We have talked about how self-care is not being selfish, but is actually working towards wellness and wholeness. So practicing self-care is something that you must do. And you can even look at doing that with some of the 4 ways in which I talked about earlier regarding self-care. Self-care is not just going to go get your nails done or get your feet done or pedicures, manicures, or get a massage and stuff like that. That's wonderful. That's not self-care. Self-care is being able to set up boundaries and say no. Self-care is being able to know that I shouldn't go here and spend the money like I need because I know something else is coming down the line. Well, that don't sound like self-care. Yes, it is, because when you don't have what you need at the time that you're gonna need it, believe me, it's gonna wear out. It's gonna wear you out because you haven't provided that self-care that you need. So, self-care is something that we definitely need to have. What are the last 2 on here? Consider your support groups, and then faith, community, and convictions, and we'll drive that point home. We're thankful for God showing us the relationship between a mother and a son. Jesus could have come down through any means, but he came through a woman, through a virgin named Mary. And so we're so thankful that the Lord allowed us to see that relationship develop, over those 33 years that the Lord was here, that Jesus was here on earth. And it builds up your faith community. So many times people, they struggle with relationships with their mother. And I'm not going to go into this too much, Bishop, because I know we are getting out of time. But it's interesting when you go back and you look at the relationship that Jesus had with his parents. You can learn so much how he respected his parents. He respected his father. He respected his mother. And that should help in building up your faith commitment. It builds up your faith commitment because they taught him the way. They taught him faith. They provided that nurturing structure for him. Now, Jesus didn't have to come that way. He could have just came down and just taken over. But I really think the Lord was very instrumental in how he portrayed how Jesus walked through life, respecting and honoring mothers, respecting and honoring fathers. And that's how we want to be able to do today. It's not by happenstance that's how Jesus grew up. It was very strategic. That's the word. And so we want to make sure we do the same thing, because even if you were not raised up in church, that's okay. You're listening to us now, and you know that there's a piece in you that knows that, that faith component, that faith commitment is ultimate to my success. So we encourage you to nurture that. We want to make sure that mothers, we know that we are believing God for you in whatever things that are going on in your life, and know that we do fully support you, and making sure that you're training up your children in the way in which they should go. But also for those who are wanting to get more of God, this is the time to do it. What an awesome way this weekend to recommit yourself to the faith commitment that you were brought up by your own mother.
Absolutely. We stand by. And of course, I closed on that with that 10-1 with faith, because I think that is just the substratum, of course. I'm unapologetically a defender of fidei, or defender of faith in that sense, particularly in this case, that there are some innately therapeutic and helpful and self-building elements to a strong faith community. There's evidence-based research data that shows the increased life expectancy for persons who consistently participate in faith community. One of the reasons is that it gives healthy options and limits the temptations of unhealthy options to dealing with traumatic experiences and stressors. And so go to church, be connected. And it's, I'll close with this, but I would be remiss if I didn't say it is particularly part of the history of the African American experience that faith community has been particularly beneficial. In fact, there's a great research done by the Barna Research Organization that is showing now that we have to be careful in research methodology, that when we're saying people aren't going to church and that kind of thing, actually that African Americans are still very much involved in faith community, more so than other demographics. And so that's why research methodology is so important, that when we're quoting these things, what research sample pool are these results coming from? Faith is still very integral to our survival, to our prophetic witness in the world. And so stay in that faith community. Don't give up. Flawed issues, but I'm reminded of the scripture in Luke 4, where it says Jesus went into the house of worship, for him the synagogue, and it says in Luke 4, as was his custom. Can you imagine what it must be like to be the living word incarnate, sitting in a worship service, critiquing the worship? Wow. Can you imagine what it must be to be the living word, listening to rabbinical presentations, really about you? And how I just wonder how many flawed moments happened. But with all of its flaws, the incarnate word, Jesus himself, made it his custom. If anybody could have pointed out flaws in the worship community, it would have been Yeshua HaMashiach, the living Son of God. And yet, for all of his flaws, he kept on coming. And even now says that the church is so beautiful that it's still my bride.
Right.
Flawed and all, I'm still going to marry her.
Right.
And so I just want to keep that faith community witness in there, because it's so very important. And make that undergird you even between appointments, even between sessions. May your faith keep you and do what only God can do. So listen, thank you for sharing with us on this Mother's Day weekend. And to every mother, we wish you a blessed Mother's Day experience and weekend. Thank you to every mother for all of the virtues and attributes you have displayed. And society is as good as it is because of how God's grace works through you to nurture, to protect, and to raise us. I finally just also want to thank Minister Kat Henderson, who is our engineer, but she is also a mom. And so we want to say Happy Mother's Day to Minister Kat Henderson for all that you do as a mom and as an engineer, because you truly nurture spirit and mind to another level.
Yes. Absolutely. Thank you all again. Happy Mother's Day from me personally. Again, thank you for everyone who was watching Spirit and Mind Marathon. We did not have the live broadcast, but we didn't miss a beat last week. I tell you, we were on. And so many of you are watched, and just wanted to thank, and I even want to thank those who are going to go back and watch the replay of this. We also want to thank you for those who will share this with your networks. So please know that we do acknowledge and are very appreciative of the information. And again, you can always go back to our social media pages. Bishop can be found on YouTube. He can be found on, there we go. Yes, all the different social media outlets. Please email him if you have any questions. Please write to him. You can also find me on various platforms. And there you go. You email me. You can find me on my website. And if you're in need of any services, or you want us to come speak, we'll be glad to entertain that request. We also can go back and look at spiritandmind.vidflex.tv, where you can also go back and look at some previous episodes. Just want to make sure everyone is aware. We're doing our best to make as much material available as possible. All right. Thank you. Happy Mother's Day again.
By the grace of God. We'll see you next time on Spirit and Mind.